Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. This week we continue the long journey north, and right now, normally I'm 2 or 3 videos ahead. I've got them uploaded and everything, but since we've been traveling so much, I've fallen behind on videos, so this one will actually be released in just a few days, assuming I get it done. But I thought I'd give you just a real quick update as to where we are. We're currently in the... Oh, you want to talk too? Okay. We wanted to say hi. But currently we're in the South Santee River. Today it is raining, so we've got 3 cooped up puppy dogs inside and everyone's fighting over rawhides. But we are about 40 miles north of Myrtle Beach, and pretty soon we'll be entering North Carolina, hopefully within a few days. So I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. Being all alone on a boat does have its challenges, and one of those things is pulling anchor and leaving, especially in an area where there's a really strong current like Matanzas Inlet. And it's a pretty narrow window there because where I anchor there's a shoal on either side of me. So as soon as I lift the anchor off the bottom, I've got to get it back up on board and get back and start motoring so I don't get pushed onto a shoal, which is always fun. But yeah, and leaving Matanzas Inlet, there's actually another inlet a couple of miles to the south. So those 2 inlets kind of, stop the water flow going to the south. Water still flows to the south, but the majority of the current through the Matanzas Inlet goes to the north, to St. Augustine. So that's where the channel gets cut in the bottom. So you do have, when entering and exiting Matanzas Inlet, you do have to stay pretty close to the north shore, otherwise you will run up on a shoal, which we found out the first time we went through Matanzas Inlet. Heading north back up to St. Augustine, we did have to go through a double bascule bridge, the Crescent Beach Bridge, and this is one of those great bridges where they open at any time. You just have to call them on the radio and they'll open for you. A lot of times they only open at the bottom of the hour or at the top of the hour or both. So the bridges that open on demand are awesome. You don't have to monkey around and wait. And on this instance, there was actually an issue with the bridge. They were doing some maintenance on it, so they only opened up 1 span, which made it a little more interesting. Normally you have a lot of room to go through, and this one was a little trickier. I was a little nervous going through, but we made it through no problem. And once we got through, the wind was in the right direction, so we actually got our head sail up, so we could do a little bit of sailing. We ended up spending the evening in St. Augustine at the mouth of the Tolomato River, and the next morning when we got up, we were approaching low tide, and the nearest marina, Comanche Cove, which is located just underneath the big bridge, the entrance to it is only 5 feet deep at low tide, and we draw 5.5. So I couldn't take the boat in, but I needed to get fuel. So I took a couple of dinghy trips in, and I got the jerry cans filled up, and we refilled our tank. So it did take 3 trips, but we ended up getting the fuel. And we wanted to get on the road early this day. As you can see, it was overcast, and we weren't going far, just 8.7 miles up to our next anchorage. But we wanted to get there because it was a weekend and the traffic was very heavy where we were at, so we were catching a lot of wake from other boaters. And we wanted to get just a little bit off the beaten path before the rain started. It occurred to me while I was making this video that you guys always get to see me pull in the anchor on these time-lapse videos, but you never get to see me deploy it because the battery is long dead by then. But this trip was so short you actually get to see me deploy the anchor for once. And we do have a big Samson post up front. I always use a snubber line, and I cleat off the snubber line and then the rope rode itself, so we've always got a pretty good hold there. And then we always power set the anchor, and we do our little chain loop for a shock absorber, so we try and anchor as securely as we can. And you know, I learned a lot of this stuff, number one, from Frank. He was my greatest source and continues to be my greatest source of information. But number two, I did learn a lot of stuff from watching YouTube videos on this stuff. So if you guys ever want to know more about how I do things, just let me know. The next morning we got up pretty early and we got back on the road to try and make it up to Jacksonville. We weren't actually going to Jacksonville. The St. Johns River runs up to Jacksonville, and we're actually going to bypass Jacksonville. But we wanted to go past the St. Johns River and anchor in Sisters Creek. Now, we did. It wasn't too long of a run. It was only about 28 miles, but I knew I was going to be fighting against the current for part of the way. And I do still have the outboard motor on the dinghy, and that's like towing an anchor behind you. It really slows you down, but it is a real pain in the butt to take the outboard off the dinghy. And that's one of the things I'm going to try and fix when I'm back in Delaware City, is to get a mount for the outboard on the side of the boat, and then a pulley system so I can lift it up and down relatively easily. The outboard I have is quite large. It is a 15 horse, and that's what's recommended for our size of dinghy. Most people have smaller ones, even as low as 2.5 horse, and that's great. I mean, you can get places with it, but you can't really get the dinghy up on plane. And we wanted to have the dinghy able to get up on plane, so when we get places we can do some more exploration, like in, you know, islands and stuff. We can zip around the island. So that's the thought there. And we've actually started anchoring more around public boat ramps. I do generate about 1 bag of trash per week, and I'd always just been putting those in the dinghy, which can get messy when it gets rainy and stuff. So I've discovered public boat ramps are a great place to drop your trash off, and since we still have the outboard on the dinghy, I can just zip over to the boat ramp, drop the trash off, and come back. It's been really convenient. I do try to motor sail as much as possible. The head sail is really easy to deploy. I can do it right from the cockpit. I don't have to get out of the cockpit to do it. And if the wind is right, you know, especially when we're towing the dinghy with the outboard on it, it really can help out. Sometimes if the wind is moderate, you know, to strong, we can get an extra knot or even more than that. So I try and sail as much as possible. We anchored for the evening just north of the St. Johns River, which runs up to Jacksonville. But we anchored just north of that in Sisters Creek, and there was a little bit of drama that night. There was a boat that was towed in by Towboat US, and they anchored. And, you know, I'm not one... I normally like to be left alone. I don't like to get in... You know, I don't like to bug other people. Like, I just assume if someone wants something, they'll say something. But I've really begun to change that outlook. I've learned through 6 to 8 different interactions that being a boater, you can really get rattled, like really rattled when stuff goes wrong. And you've seen stuff that I've done. I've done major things wrong, and I've been really, really rattled. You know, I punched holes in the bottom of the boat. What can you do more serious than that? But what I've learned is, just in the short time boating, is just reaching out to people and asking if everything's okay. You know, if you can help, if they need any help. It means a lot to people. So the boat that was towed in, they were anchored right next to us. So I just reached out and asked them, you know, if they needed any help, if they needed any tools or help diagnosing a problem. And they had just run aground in a shallow spot, you know, and when they were trying to back off, they ran over their dinghy painter, which is the line that connects the dinghy to the boat, and they were just, you know, a little bit rattled, and it sounded like they were newer boaters. So, you know, I just reassured them, you know, look, I've done that twice myself. It's not a big deal. You know, stuff's going to go wrong. And I talked to them for quite a while. We chatted about different electrical things and different setups, and it really seemed to calm them down, you know. And you know, a couple of weeks later, just north of Charleston, you know, I ran aground. I was stuck with 3 other sailboats, all 3 of us in the same section. It's just really shallow there, and this time of, or, you know, with the moon phase the way it is, these tides were really low. So there's your average low water, which is your average low tide, and these tides were up to 0.74 feet below the average low, so they were super low. And we were going right through a bad spot at low tide, and 3 of us got stuck. One in the center, and then 2 of us tried to go on either side, and neither made us up. Literally, there was nothing that we could do to get through that section. So we just had to sit there, you know. We just waited 2 hours. The tide came in and got us up a couple of feet, and then we could go through. It was no big deal. And, you know, there was another person. I had stayed in that area for an extra day because I had to do engine maintenance. I had to change my transmission oil, engine oil, my heat exchanger zinc, so I just had stuff to do. And other people were running around in the same spot, and you could just hear that they were stressing out, you know, which is totally understandable. I just had a sail issue that I was stressing out about, and I'm not going to go into that. You guys will hear that in a few episodes, but I get the stress, and I've started reaching out to these people, and I just say, look, same thing happened to me. There were 3 of us stuck in that exact same spot yesterday. There were 3 of us ahead, or there were 3 other people ahead that were stuck as well. So, you know, don't feel bad, and, you know, you just have to wait it out. And the people are so appreciative. You can even tell, even they're older people than you can tell by their voice, and they're like, oh my God, thank you. You know, I thought I did something wrong. And it's like, no, it's just, you know, there's a shoal there. There's no way to get through. And I don't know, my outlook on bugging people has kind of begun to change, because I've seen how valuable just those little touches can be to other people. So, yeah. So that next day we headed up to the Nassau River, and it was a relatively short trip. It was only like 8 to 12 miles, and it turned out to be perfect. The wind was right, and we weren't in a hurry, so I was actually able to shut off the motor and use the head sail, and when we were going with the current, we were going 3 knots, which was awesome. It did drop down a little bit as we got closer to the Nassau River, but I don't know how to explain it. When I shut off that motor, it's like all the stress just goes away. And I don't know if it's like, in my mind, motor is science, so I need to make the science go faster, and then when I turn off the science, it's just, okay, now I'm at the mercy of Mother Nature, and it's just awesome. I can't wait till I get up in areas like the Neuse River, Pamlico Sound, Albemarle Sound, Alligator River, and of course Chesapeake Bay, where I'm going to try and just sail 100% up Chesapeake Bay this time. So yeah, I just love turning that darn motor off. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to our Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I would not make these videos, so thank you guys so very much. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Linbo, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spahn. Thank you guys so very much. It means the world to me. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll give you access to our Patreon page where you can sign up. And from there you get tons of extra bonus content, lots of photos, videos. I try and do updates 2 or 3 times a week while I'm traveling to let you know currently where I'm at and what's going on, and you'd help to support the channel, which is awesome. And if you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us out as well. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.